Welcome back. And coming up, government shared services. The concept's been around for a long time, since 2004, and it's the pooling or sharing of common administrative functions, typically finance, procurement and HR. Something that's relevant to all central government departments and their agencies, if not wider. It's not seen as being as high profile as other front-end transformation initiatives, certainly not that citizens would immediately notice, but nevertheless no less important. If you make it easier for the 450,000 or so civil servants to support government priorities and do their jobs, then the services for citizens in turn will follow. Now, from the government's perspective, we're talking about driving efficiencies, making it easier for managing civil servants, including things like recruitment, security vetting, as well as payroll services, and having a fuller understanding of the workforce and improving their experience. Now, from the civil servants' perspective, as individuals, it's about being able to quickly and easily navigate your HR environment. Simple things like booking leave or checking your payslip. When you consider the vision behind it and the savings of £400 million by 2023, according to the government shared services strategy, there aren't many transformations that can say that. But that doesn't mean to say putting shared services into practice is easy. It's far from it. So, with us to discuss the context, some of the challenges and the future direction are Georgina O'Toole, Chief Analyst at TechMarketView, which provides advice to both government and suppliers alike. Libby Mason, who, having worked both client and supplier side, is now a Senior Advisor at Fujitsu's Government Shared Services Practice. And also Anton Whitefoot, Head of Public Sector HCM at Oracle UK, by far the largest software provider underpinning much of the shared services implementations live today. Georgina, let's talk first of all, if we can, about the market context and the challenges there. What really is the government shared services strategy and what are its benefits?
I think it was interesting what you said about it being sort of something that's under the radar, not really having the high profile that some other transformation programs have got. So I think what's important to get across is, like you say, the scale of this project, the challenges involved in it, the potential benefits that government could get from it, but also the step change that they've had to put into the newest government shared services strategy to ensure that some of these benefits are realised. So in terms of the scale, you've already talked about the potential benefits of £400 million by 2023. If you think about the number of civil servants this is serving, we talked about up to nearly 500,000 civil servants. You've got 15 million transactions going through the shared services centres every year with £180 billion in value of transactions. So that gives you a sense of the scale and the potential benefits. So what we've seen is a really long journey. Like you say, shared service is not a new concept. It started in 2004. The SSCL was established for one of the independent shared services centres in government in 2013. And since then, they've gone on a long journey of attracting more and more government departments into that. And basically, in terms of this journey is going to take us right through to 2028. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. And the step change has gone from focusing on the efficiencies that can be realised to something much bigger, something much more important.
Right, so the high level objectives then of the government services, shared services strategy is what?
So there's 3 new objectives in the new strategy. One is focused around efficiency, value and security. So the efficiency, like I say, has been part of the agenda since the very beginning, but there's obviously more that can be done. Then there's the centering around converged, simple processes that are common across departments and agencies. And then there's the focusing on meeting user needs, which I think is important because, like you say, it's always been about the citizen. We've always focused on making things better for the citizen. What we've often forgotten about is making things better for the civil servants that are doing their job within government. So that's the three areas that are now being focused on. And it's a real step change, and it's going to require, it's a much bigger ambition than we've seen previously.
It is, isn't it? And the challenges, the obstacles perhaps you're having to deal with, I mean, there must be new hurdles along the way?
Yeah, so I think with the stepped up ambition, we've seen new challenges. So early on, the challenges were predominantly all around, well, not really managing risks as well as they could. If you look back at the National Audit Office report from 2016, that was one of the key findings, that government didn't manage the risks involved in such a large programme too well. And a lot of that was to do with departments and agencies not being willing to collaborate, not being willing to be as flexible as they might be in order to come together with this common approach. Now we've got even more challenges because we're trying to achieve more. So now we're seeing that shared services can't really be focused on as one thing with a boundary. We need to look at it more broadly in the context of the broader public sector and what's going on, because it needs to achieve more in terms of helping government make better decisions, have better management intelligence, etc. So you need to bring in the whole data picture, which means drawing in data from various systems, not just the ERP systems, not just the HR finance systems, etc. So it becomes a much bigger picture to manage, much more about collaboration, much more about integration across the public sector.
Anton, Oracle is the largest ERP provider. Where does Oracle fit in terms of the scope of shared services?
Well, as you say, Michael, we're currently, and have been for a while, had a long relationship with central government in the shared services landscape. We've recently worked with some departments, small, medium and now large, to deploy our new capability in cloud, which supports government's cloud first agenda, to drive standardised process using modern technology, which really delivers a couple of things that Georgina said. We've stepped back and looked at what outcomes government are trying to achieve from the strategy, and I think Georgina's spot on and hit the nail on the head. These two main outcomes that we can see. One is making it easier for the civil servants to do their day jobs. They've got far more important things to be doing than interacting with a monolithic system.
I noticed you nodding when Georgina was talking about that. That is key, isn't it?
It really is key. These folks run the country. They've got something far more important to be doing. If you're a border force guard, if you're working in a job centre, they're serving us as citizens in that context. So giving them something that's easy to use, and that, speaking to a number of government stakeholders, they always say they get frustrated that the technology that we all use at home at night, and then what we're expecting their employees to use during the day is hugely stark, and what they use during the day is largely very inefficient and very old. So that's one outcome. And the second important outcome is the economic case for change. There are a lot of efficiencies, financial efficiencies. Government pays service providers to deal with the large volume transactions that Georgina spoke about. And if we can help government reduce those costs of what they pay service providers to transact these millions of transactions every year, then government clearly have got that money to spend on other things.
So how do you at Oracle, I mean, through this strategy, how are you supporting the government's cloud-first policy?
We are working with departments directly to do a couple of things that, again, Georgina said. Thanks, great introduction. Standardised process, deploy modern technology that really enables both of those outcomes that we've talked about. Mobile first, making it easy for civil servants to interact with the system, and then we also drive automation into the technology platform, without getting too complicated, Michael, but a high degree automation. If you look at how many supplier invoices the government process every year, if we can automate that, as has happened in the commercial industry space, as much as possible, and drive the cost of transacting those invoices out of the civil service machine, then, as I say, they've got those important funds to spend on something far more important.
How much of this is an if? Because there are civil servants, as you say, working on systems they find difficult, old systems, and are saying, why can't I have, good stuff like perhaps I have at home? Is this actually going to happen? Are we really going to see a difference?
It's already happening, Michael. We've already worked with some small, medium, and now some very large, complex central government departments who, deploying this technology is difficult for any organisation, private sector or public sector. But I think the whole industry and supply base has learned how to help large, complex organisations embrace change, deploy new technology, standardise process. These are easy things to say, but they're very hard for large machines like the civil service to do.
Are you finding government departments working better together now because they see the challenge and they see they've got to do something perhaps more than they've done before?
Yeah, I think they are. I think they better understand the problem and the challenge, the size of the challenge. I think they're getting a lot smarter at sharing information across government. It's not always been one of government's strengths to share information across government, but they're getting a lot smarter at that and applying the learnings from some of the early projects that they call pathfinders, to other departments to make sure that those departments don't run into the same barriers.
As we shift to the cloud in shared services, there are more challenges and more challenges about getting departments to fall into line
Yeah.
as such, isn't there? So I think one of the key tenets of the shared services strategy is that as we move to the cloud into software as a service, departments should be adopting the processes that fit to that software as a service rather than adapting their organisations, if you see what I mean. So it's going to be harder because there's an acceptance that they want converged processes across government, but there's also a realisation that that's not necessarily going to be able to happen 100%. So there's a really fine balancing act.
That's a very interesting distinction. Libby, from Fujitsu, let's pull this together. In terms of the size and the complexity of the market, or given that size and how complicated it is, what's Fujitsu's role? What is Fujitsu doing to help the government deliver its shared services strategy?
Well, I mean, we've heard sort of about the long history that, and the journey that we've all been on in government shared services, and Fujitsu's been there since the beginning. So we heard about the SSCL, the SOP platform, which is a platform that is delivering Oracle functionality to some of the major departments from MOJ to DWP, EA, and DEFRA. So we've got hundreds of thousands of customers on that platform, and Fujitsu are the technology provider who have gone along that journey with the Cabinet Office with SSCL to implement that and to deliver that service out to those hundreds of thousands of customers. We've also been supporting the Cloud First strategy and working on one of the major Pathfinder programs. So we've just had a successful go live over the weekend at the METIS program in the Home Office, and that's a major step forward in terms of demonstrating that you can take a large, complex department into the cloud. So that's been a journey that we've been on with them since the beginning. So,
but of course, one of the issues is only some departments are live in the cloud at the moment. What do you see as the priority or the way ahead to moving government that way more so?
Well, I think that, when we've talked about a little bit about sort of what's that narrative been, I think that absolutely there's a massive opportunity around efficiency and performance, so we all kind of have seen and have experienced the ability to make improvements around performance from, whether it's paying invoices or, doing a timesheet or making an expense claim. So there's a massive operational opportunity there. But I think, from my perspective and having worked in government and been a senior civil servant delivering these programs and running these types of services, I think that there is a more compelling narrative that needs to be emotionally connected to departments around sort of saying, actually it's not just about paying invoices in the back office. This is about fundamentally being able to manage our workforce more effectively, giving our employees a better experience, manage our performance and our talent. We've got massive challenges right now about deploying and redeploying staff across, whether it's COVID or Brexit, and government, isn't slowing down in terms of those challenges that they need to rise to. So I think, from my perspective anyway, I think that there needs to be a bit of a shift in the narrative to be a bit more ambitious around the value creation, around those benefits that come to departments and to senior leaders about how they run their departments.
It's a shift in the mindset, isn't it? It's
Yes.
a shift in the mindset from it being a technology change program to being a business change program.
Yeah,
That this is
absolutely.
more than about just having standard ERP across government. It's about actually changing the way civil servants operate.
And that narrative has got to come right the way through the whole system, through yourselves, through government and everything. Because you've got that background of working in the civil service and seeing how slowly sometimes it moves, and sometimes necessarily.
Well, absolutely. And I think, look, government is a large and complex organization. And even though departments are autonomous, they're very much connected in terms of, whether it's vetting or pensions. There's a lot of sort of services that interact with the government shared services that are not independent for any department. But as a leader in the civil service, for me, it was about being able to provide more effective decision making, be able to have data at my fingertips that I could help. I was a financial controller in the Home Office, so there's some really challenging mandates in the Home Office that you need to be able to take decisions about, and that is the kind of data and analytics and those kinds of more higher value driven benefits that Fujitsu are working with our customers to make sure that we can kind of absolutely get the basics right, get that efficiency and that performance improvement around doing the transactional, but how do we start to come up that value chain? Because that's what's compelling to ministers, and that's what's compelling to senior civil servants, and that's how we start to shift that narrative away from transformation in the back office to transformation about the way that we run our business.
And that very much is the challenge, isn't it? We talk about living in the cloud. What does that actually mean nowadays?
I think from our perspective, Michael, we've got a number of government organisations live in the cloud and who've been live in the cloud for 3 or 4 years now, albeit some of the smaller agencies initially and now some of the larger departments. So the world that they've come from is they've used the same IT system for 20 years. Okay, the difference with living in the cloud is really profound. Once you're live on the system from day one, you don't stop there. The system continually evolves. There's more innovation being driven into the system, and organisations need to be ready to embrace that and adopt that on a quarterly basis. And that's where the value comes from. Previously, you'd spend years plumbing in an IT system, and once it was live, you'd leave it for 10 years. This is a very different world. So they need an organisation model that's in place, ready to, on an ongoing business as usual basis or continual improvement basis, embrace that new technology to drive value.
So Libby, this is much more dynamic. It moves on all the time, which is easier for an organisation?
Well, I think it's more difficult actually, because and what it means is that the engagement model needs to change significantly between the service providers. So Fujitsu, for example, we're having to innovate our service delivery model to make sure that we can respond and we can bring the right skills and the right ways of working to our clients to make sure that they can take advantage of that value that is being delivered through the Oracle platform. Because as those quarterly releases come out, if you are not ready and your business isn't there, ready to adopt it, they don't have a roadmap, understanding when those functional drops are coming and being, preparing their people. It's all about adoption. It's all about making sure, Georgina talked about it. And adoption isn't just sort of, forcing yourself down into kind of working in a new way. It's embracing it. It's making sure that you leverage that technology that is being put at your disposal. So it means new skills and new ways of working for your service provider. So Fujitsu, we've invested a lot into that. It means new skills and services for the retained functions who are the interface between us and the clients. And it also means more proactive management and engagement from finance, HR, and commercial function, because they need to come ready, willing, and able to bring that change and deliver that value.
Let's just round up, summarise if we can, with a question for all of you, really, or your thoughts on this. Changing any business or organisation is not easy, and as we've talked about, the civil service, big organisation, that's a tough one as well. How can suppliers really help government to do the transformation they need to do and help them to take advantage of the technical capability that exists? Anton, what would your thought be on that to start with?
I think the key thing for me, Michael, is understanding how government works. A lot of large, complex private sector organisations have dealt with this challenge, but they operate in a very different regime and dynamic. So being able to drive change, organisational change across 450,000 people is a big challenge. So I think it's incumbent on suppliers to understand that and not treat government like every other industry. And once you understand, and Libby's perfectly placed to do that, having worked client side within the machine and then now supplying into it, I think if suppliers can do that and share as much thought leadership as they can with government around the real challenges, there's no technology constraint in this, and there's lots of business change methodologies, but being able to figure out how that's going to land with government to enable this outcome as quickly and efficiently as possible, it's incumbent on suppliers to do that.
Okay, Georgina?
What I would say is I think suppliers are probably going to find themselves in a much hungrier environment, an environment that wants change more, and change that's being driven right from the top, so from number 10. So, there's a lot of talk about government is not efficient, it's frustrating, there's friction, and that's what the civil servants face and the ministers face every day. And it's right at the top, number 10. Dominic Cummings would like to see the machinery of government completely altered, but we can't do that in the current environment. We haven't got the money to do that. So it's technology and data that are going to be the things that enable some of that friction to be taken out of the system, some of the silos to be broken down, things to flow better. So I think suppliers will be opening a bit more, will be knocking a bit more of an open door in the coming few years. All
right, so Libby, now potentially is the moment for suppliers to help government.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we always have to be, considerate about, what is the environment of the day, what are the priorities of the day. And I think when we talk about government shared services, what I feel anyway is that it really does align very nicely to kind of the government's objectives and what they're trying to do, and as an enabler for the more effective running of government, for the ability to attract, retain, and develop talent, for the ability to make better, more effective decisions. Our as we've all seen in recent months, our fiscal challenges are not going to go away, and for government to be able to be in a position to be able to make more effective decisions with with the money that they do have, moving to cloud, having better data, upskilling their people to be able to use these cloud technologies, because I think that's that's something that really goes under. Sort of undervalued, I think, in terms of this transformation. Yes, there's a hearts and mind. Yes, there's a culture shift, but there's a real opportunity to upskill government to be able to take advantage of this.
So now is very much the moment then. Libby, Anton, Georgina, thank you very much indeed. If you'd like to know more or to discuss shared services with any of the vendors, please feel free to contact them through LinkedIn. Georgina O'Toole at TechMarketView, Anton Whitefoot at Oracle, and of course Libby Mason at Fujitsu. Thanks for joining us.